Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today, I'm discussing my top 10 favorite Alfred Hitchcock movies. This is my top 10 list that I've been going over for the last month or so, watching through the Criterion Channel Hitchcock through the holidays, rewatching some favorites. This has been a lot of fun. And the purpose of this top 10 list, more than anything else, is to get people thinking about the wonderful filmography of Alfred Hitchcock. And I hope someone will watch a new film from him they haven't seen before, or revisit a classic. Of course, this is all subjective fun, and it's just my opinion. I'm going to start with my number 10 pick, Rear Window, starring James Stewart and Grace Kelly. This is my booklet from the Alfred Hitchcock Masterpiece Collection. Got this from a Sam's Club one day, so this is the copy I have of some of the films. But has anyone ever been able to get more out of a single location than Hitchcock did? And watching James Stewart injured there, watch it, through his binoculars, trying to figure out what's happening in each of these little rooms across from him in these windows is pretty fun. It's pretty spectacular. I mean, I didn't love the film the first time I saw it many years ago, but I have gone back and rewatched it a few times, and I just enjoy the actual putting together clues aspect of that movie. And there are a few scenes where he's looking through, and the tension that's built in that way, it kind of makes you feel helpless. It makes you feel confined in that space with James Stewart. And of course, that's Grace Kelly, I think, in one of her best roles, outside of maybe something like High Noon. And their chemistry together is great. The costumes are great. It's a lot of fun. So that's my number 10 pick. My number 9 pick, I recently watched this. I've only seen it once, so I'll be curious if this goes up on my list over time, but this would be Notorious, and I am a big fan of this cover art with the key. If you've seen the movie, you'll know why this is such an important scene. This is a real dark one. Basically, Cary Grant is working for the police to try to figure something out, this mystery out, and he ends up needing the help of Ingrid Bergman, right? Yeah, Ingrid Bergman. And she has to basically prostitute herself after they're in love to get some information as a spy during the Nazi wartime. And the dialogue and what's suggested, and there's a viciousness to the film. I was surprised that this was made. This is 1946. If you've seen this movie, it can be quite shocking how blunt it is and dirty and grimy. And Claude Rains is so perfectly cast as that person she is forced to marry. It's a tremendous film. It's not as pleasantly entertaining as some of his movies, which I actually appreciated. It's almost a little bit more meaningful in terms of characterization than some of his other films. So I put Notorious at number 9 in that light. And a film that I also watched for the first time, and it kind of blew me away how much I enjoyed it, except for maybe the last few minutes, which I thought were a little weaker. So it holds it back just a tad for me. But outside of that, I think that his last really good film, Frenzy, is my number 8 choice. I think this movie is very good. So Frenzy is another one of those the wrong guy's been picked for the crime kind of movies. There is a serial killer who uses a necktie to strangle his victims, and both the serial killer and the wrong man are incredibly compelling main characters. I had a little bit, for those of you that have seen Peeping Tom, that the Criterion put the 4K out, those characters remind me just a little bit of each other. I don't think they're the same character, but for whatever reason it does. And the screenwriter of that film, Anthony Schaefer, wrote The Wicker Man, the original, which is one of my favorite films. It kind of felt like a little bit of being at home, so to speak, just listening to the writing style. So I really enjoyed Frenzy. I think there are a few absolutely terrific moments of tension. And there's one scene that I can't believe was even played in a theater. I mean, to my knowledge, this is Hitchcock's only rated R movie, and one of the kill scenes is like much more graphic than what you're probably used to out of this director. So do give Frenzy a watch if you haven't. Number 7, one of my favorite books, Rebecca, and I just finished the Laurence Olivier version. Folks, this movie's so good. It Rebecca is a really good twisting, winding story of a young woman who ends up marrying a man whose wife, Rebecca, is deceased, and they move into the home, and there are some issues there that are caused in part because of the death and complications surrounding Rebecca. If you like the movie, please read the book. They're both very good. It's hard for anyone to compete with a book of that caliber. Rebecca is one of the best books I've ever read, but I think these two did a really good job. And George Stevens, the character he plays, who is something of an antagonist to the family, talking around spoilers here, I really like that supporting acting performance. I've just always loved George Stevens, and I think he adds a little something to all of his pictures. Terrific moments of tension in the final frame in that, and the use of the letter R. I think Hitchcock got quite a bit out of never really showing her. And it's just a terrific film. What can I say? All right, number 6. Now, my number 6 pick, I'm going to admit to you, my number 6 pick is probably like a little high on this list. And it does have some kind of poorly aged scenes, and it has some slow parts. But when this movie hits, it delivers. Like, The Birds is my number 6 pick, and I know I'm putting it kind of high on the list, but there are some scenes in The Birds that are just so much better than most movie scenes that are trying to use tension. And if you haven't ever heard of The Birds, the concept also from a Daphne du Maurier short story, which is a really good short story, a lot different than the movie, is that the birds in general have started attacking humans slowly and methodically. And there are so many good conversations where you see people try to make sense of the tragedy. There's a real good scene in a diner where you can see one woman trying to shoo her children away because she's scared that they're scared. And there's a scene involving a gas pump in that's really good. And when the bird attacks do really come full force, I think when you actually don't see the birds very much, it's absolutely terrifying. The problem with the film is like some of the effects with the birds we could have done without. And I do think it takes kind of a long time to get to the point. Not that slow burns are bad. I talk about great slow burns on this channel all the time. But it does move a wee bit slow with this sort of love triangle and this thing with like his mom that's not super interesting, but I don't think that really takes away from how entertaining and full of tension the film is. The birthday party balloons, like, it's full of iconic Hitchcock moments, and I had to put it on my list. Now let's go to my number 5 pick, which my number 5 pick is a little bit more, has to do for me visually. I've never been overly in love with the story the way I am some of these, but I think this might be his best looking film, Vertigo, at number 5. And has Hitchcock ever made more interesting visuals than Vertigo in this story? If you my booklet says Hitchcock created the camera's optical effect, combination of forward zoom and reverse tracking in order to convey the sensory experience of vertigo to the audience. And of course, there's some good twisting and turning in this one with James Stewart being a detective looking for a woman, in San Francisco. And it is one of those movies that makes you feel disturbed and kind of depressed. And it is sort of an artistic achievement from the director. And I think you have to put it on any list for that reason alone. That's my thoughts on Vertigo. Now, the next 4 are the films that most personally affect me when I watch them, which makes them just a little bit higher of a tier for me in how I react to them. And I had not seen this next one in many, many, many years, but I went back and I rewatched it, and it made it all the way to number 4 for me. This is Joseph Cotton's terrific, career-defining, perhaps decade-defining performance in Shadow of a Doubt as Uncle Charlie, the murderer who has come to hide out with the family, with Teresa Wright. Yeah, Teresa Wright, who plays his niece, and she's also named Charlie, but then she starts to discover some things, and there's tension in the family. And I did a whole video on this, and I said before, and I'll say again, that watching a menace that's so everyday, this character is a stone cold killer who's just at dinner with ordinary folks. And Hitchcock so often had these exotic kind of killers or mysteries, things that, were just sort of fun to watch on the screen from afar. But this was so much more personal. And I think Joseph Cotten is probably my second favorite villain in all of the Hitchcock films. He is so menacing and twisted. And when he delivers dialogue, it's like, I compared this in a previous video. Like, he just says things to try to sound smart, to justify his own evil. And that I've compared that to Sallow, the characters that do that in the movie about fascism that Pasolini made. I think it's a terrifically well-written screenplay, and makes great use of the stairs, of course, in there. Speaking of which, my number 3 pick has a really good stairs scene in it, and I don't have a copy of this yet. I'm looking for a nice copy, and if anyone knows and wants to leave me a comment, I can't find anything I like, but I watched this on the Criterion channel and was blown away by it. I mean, this was like Strangers on a Train at number 3. This pick, just every minute of it was just exquisite. So 2 strangers being on a train, and one proposes to the other that they murder each other's like problem people in their lives. One of them has a horrible marriage, and the other one just hates his father, I believe. And it has this whole carnival scene where this murder happens, and like, it's creepy. I'm a big Carnival of Souls fan, okay? The black and white from the Criterion Collection. I love that sequence. I can't wait to watch it again. I loved the bad guys, the good guys, everything top to bottom. Strangers on a Train is entertaining. It's it's scary, The stalker element. One of the characters starts stalking another character, and everywhere he looks, he's there. And I love a good stalker element in a movie, like It Follows. You got some of that going on. And I need to get a good copy. I'm actually regretting that I don't have one right now. What a movie. All right, number 2. So we're getting down to like the stuff that, pretty much everybody's at least heard of this next one, because it's sort of redefined movies in a way. I mean, it broke so many rules. And in case you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil one big rule it broke, but Psycho, which is so good that it even got a great TV series called Bates Motel, as sort of a informal, prequel set in modern day. But Psycho, it does feature the iconic Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates, and Vera Miles. Gosh, just compared to some of the movies she's been in, like, I think of her in The Searchers, and then thinking of her being in this film too. How good is this movie, man? Like, the whole shower sequence from start to the thing that happens to like after the thing, and then the unraveling of that mystery, that whole sequence has to be like one of the most legendary in all of cinema, right? And of course the performance is charismatic and creepy, and you have to see Psycho if you haven't. It's just like, how do you not watch Psycho at least once every now and again? And if you go through and watch it again, you're going to like it better than the last time you watched it. And then if you watch it again, the same thing's going to happen. Please watch Psycho if you haven't. All right, my number 1. And I'm looking for the best possible collector's version of this, because I travel a lot. I travel across the country every summer. We drive from the East Coast to the West Coast. And for that reason, this movie appeals to me a little bit more. But also, I really like Hitchcock movies when they're a little bit funny, a little bit sassy, a little bit of good mystery, a little bit of good suspense, and great chemistry with the actors. That tends to be where I really, really like my Hitchcock films. So, what would be the best example of that? North by Northwest, my number 1 pick for the greatest Alfred Hitchcock movie. It even features a national park monument, doesn't it? Cary Grant involved in some ludicrously absurd, over-the-top plot with like secret agents and like trying to figure out why he's being framed, and he gets hammered, and by people that make him get drunk, and like wrecks a car, and it's exquisitely photographed. The placement of the camera in every frame, like the fact that Ava Marie Saint is just. Can you imagine being like, okay, here's Cary Grant, right, in like an all-time great role, and then you have Ava Marie Saint who sits down at that card table with her and holds her own, and it might even be the best part of the whole film. And of course, when it does go dark, it doesn't stay so dark that it takes the entertainment out of the thing. I have no idea how the screenwriter, how Hitchcock balanced all of this in a fairly timely manner too. I mean, this is a story that would take 4.5 hours for a current director to tell, and he does it in far less than that. And on top of that, on top of everything else, it's just a blast to watch. Seriously, it's so much more fun than you even remember. And I love it, man. I love North by Northwest. It is in my top 100 movies, and I almost want to watch it again. Like I said, I need to find a good collector's edition of it. But those are my picks for Alfred Hitchcock's top 10. I know I left out a few that might be kind of controversial there. I will tell you, I did have The Wrong Man in there at one point. As one of them. I don't know, it was close. I struggled, but that's what I ended up with. So if you did like the content today and you want to click that like button, please feel free to do that. It does grow the YouTube channel and help with those views. Please tell me what your favorites are. Do you think I got it all wrong? Like, let me know. Or if you agree with some of them or whatever it is. Anyway, we'll see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.